You're simply the best, better than all the rest, better than anyone I've ever met. I'm stuck on your heart.
This year's recipient of the Sybil Frenette Outstanding Leadership Award has been involved in nonprofit housing for over 30 years. Few have had such broad experience in our sector or made a great impact on housing. This leader is described by colleagues as a visionary, a champion for social housing tenants, a policy wizard, and housing developer extraordinaire, a giant in our sector. ONPHA is pleased to present the 2007 Sybil Frenette Award for Outstanding Leadership to Keith Ward. Keith Ward is Peel Region's Commissioner of Human Services and General Manager of Peel Living. He has a large portfolio with responsibility for 14,000 social housing units, including 70 Peel Living properties, plus Ontario Works and Children's Services in the region. Peel is highly regarded for innovation in nonprofit housing and for enhancing the lives of thousands of families and individuals. Keith's leadership, without doubt, has driven many of its achievements. Paul Paleschi, a Peel councillor and president of Peel Housing Corporation, says, Keith is an exceptional leader who exhibits that rare combination of big-picture thinking, unyielding dedication, and an innate ability to inspire and make things happen. Keith is a doer. When Keith sees a need, he takes action. Over the last 2 decades, he has driven the growth of Peel Living. Keith joined Peel's Department of Housing in 1986 after 9 years in policy and research at the City of Toronto Housing Department. He brought a strong development perspective to Peel housing policy. Under his leadership, new construction at Peel Living took off. In the early 90s, it had the highest volume of nonprofit housing construction in Ontario, building over 4,000 units. Keith is entrepreneurial and willing to take risks. He thinks outside the box to make things happen. Keith went about aggressively building relations with developers and builders. He formalized standards and design guidelines before this was common. Developers liked his business-like approach. Keith talked their language, and he managed to establish such trust that some agreed to work on Peel Living projects, even when there were no guarantees of funding. Keith says proudly, over 1,000 new units were the result of year-end deals, which Peel Living secured simply because it had projects ready to go, when others encountered delays. Peel Living has been one of the few housing providers which kept developing housing after 1995, largely because of the alliances Keith and Peel Living staff forged with the private sector. One of the most successful partnerships has been with Martin Way Contracting, a community-minded developer whose strong community conscience contributed to lower development and operating costs on a number of projects, including Millbrook Place, a building for seniors and special needs singles, which opened in 2003. Somerville Pines, a seniors building which opened in 2005. And Peel Youth Village, an innovative mixed-use complex with housing for homeless youth and a neighborhood community center which opened in 2006. Housing remains high on the agenda of Peel Regional Council, thanks to Keith and his team, who have demonstrated over and over that housing is critical to individual and community health, and it makes good business sense. Keith is highly respected by councillors who continue to commit money and land to new projects like the John Street Housing Development, one of the largest affordable housing projects to be built in Ontario in the last 10 years. Most of Peel's housing has been developed under Keith's leadership, and it reflects his vision that housing must be integrated and balanced in healthy communities and should help those most in need. When Keith first came to Peel, there was little coordination among community agencies, but that quickly changed as Keith sought out community organizations and asked how they could work together. Again, he built trust, and soon Peel Living was partnering with agencies and including supportive housing in each new development. It was well ahead of other housing providers at the time. One of the developments Keith says he is most proud of is Fletcher's View. It was the first Peel Living development to house seniors and non-seniors in one building with a common recreation space, and which included supportive housing units managed by Supportive Housing in Peel and March of Dimes. Keith worked closely with the two organizations in the planning and design of the building, which included programming and office space for the two organizations. 10% of the units were fully accessible, a very high percentage for the time. Today, many community agencies have supportive housing units in Peel Living buildings. These include groups such as Peel Halton Acquired Brain Injury Services, which developed the first group home in Peel for people with brain injuries, Community Living Mississauga, and Peel Senior Link, which has 100 supportive housing units for seniors in 7 Peel Living communities. Ray Applebaum, Executive Director of Peel Senior Link, has nothing but praise for Keith. Keith always has a vision of what needs to be done to care for people, and he looks for opportunities and partners to make it happen. He is continually connecting and leveraging people and resources to fulfill the vision of a healthy community. Lori Riddler, Chief Executive Officer of Supportive Housing in Peel, credits Keith and Peel Living with the growth of SHIP, as the agency is known. She says, not only has Keith been a mentor and advisor to SHIP for many years, but he has made people with mental health issues feel valued as stakeholders and tenants. People matter to Keith. He says that's why he got into housing.
It's really about helping people, and certainly the greatest sense of reward that I've had on my career as I've gone through is getting that acknowledgement from individuals. The single memory that stands out with me the most is when we did a project opening. An old woman came up to me with a middle-aged fellow in a wheelchair and said, "This is my son, and I just want to thank you very much. I didn't know what I was going to do until you gave me this." And that shook me up, but that's what sticks with me.
Keith has a special ability to work with people. Glenn O'Brett, Director of Property Management at Peel Living, says Keith uses his leadership and management skills to effectively work and negotiate with numerous stakeholders and successfully balance competing interests. If you've seen Keith at community meetings, dealing with NIMBY, you have to agree. Keith is a master. He's been known to turn some of the most vocal opponents of supportive housing projects into active supporters. Keith is also able to wear both his service manager hat and his housing hat with ease. He is a great resource on housing for many of the service managers and a leader in the Service Manager Housing Network. Patricia Mullen, a Peel councillor and chair of the Housing Committee, says Keith's expertise and knowledge are highly valued by service providers across the province. They are equally valued by housing providers and sector organizations. Catherine Boucher, a past chair of ONPHA, says at the time of devolution, staff and board members regularly consulted Keith on how best to make the system work, and work with service managers. As always, Keith had important things to say. He is politically savvy, understands housing, knows housing policy like no one else, and has worked with many of the key players in housing, municipalities, and government. Keith's resume is truly impressive. He has been part of many key sector organizations at some point in his career. Currently, Keith is Vice Chair of the Social Housing Services Corporation Financial Inc., a member of the SHSC Asset Management Group, active in the Service Managers Housing Network, on the Association of Municipalities of Ontario's Housing and Homelessness Task Force, and chair of ONPHA's Housing Development and Revitalization Housing Committee, just to name a few. In the past, he has been a key player in Peel Region committees on older adults and on homelessness. He also served as elected Vice President of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, which was an impressive vote of confidence in his abilities, given that key positions at AMO generally go to elected officials. At ONPHA, Keith has done it all. He helped launch ONPHA at the founding conference in Thunder Bay in 1988, has served 9 years on the board and was treasurer, sat on countless committees, and provided endless advice on practical, political, and policy issues. We have a lot to thank Keith for. Keith truly is an outstanding leader in our sector, respected by housing providers, by ONPHA, by colleagues at Peel Region, and associates across Ontario, Canada, and internationally. He is well liked, has a great sense of humor, is committed to housing and improving lives, and to enjoying personal projects which take him far afield and keep him close to home. ONPHA is delighted to honor Keith Ward with the 2007 Sybil Frenette Award for Outstanding Leadership. Please join me in congratulating this esteemed friend and much admired colleague.